All right, welcome everyone. We have Shelly Nash here from Sioux City Community Schools. Shelly, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background, your current role, that would be great to get us going.
Sure. I am K-12 consulting teacher in science and technology, and formerly in the physics classroom for 30 years. And yeah, taken on a new role, really tech integration, but supporting through a science lens at K-12. So full gamut of grades, and it's been my new task. So.
Fantastic. And you said you taught in the classroom before this. Can you give us a little bit background on that, what you did before you moved into this role?
Yeah, I taught all different science classes, but mostly in physics, and did project-based learning with a combined geometry physics project-based course. And I've taken PBL workshops through the Buck Institute in terms of project-based learning, and really explored the power of that, the project-based, the community-driven, community engaged look for our students. That's really one area that I continue to support in, and really try to make sure that teachers have the opportunity to do that, because it's good for students. It's a rich learning environment that challenges all kids at all levels, 21st century skills or interpersonal skills, all those terms that we think about. How do we get our kids to communicate? How do we get them to think deeper in a more complex situation? So yeah, that's my experience incorporating project-based learning. It's looked different over the years, continues to evolve and change, just like everything in education. Looks different this year than it has in the past, but still pushing toward that. That project-based environment is a really great space to have kids learn in. So I love that piece of it.
So give us a little more experience about STEM education, project-based learning at your schools. You just talked about kind of what you did when you were teaching. What's kind of the vision for your schools, Sioux City, in general, what you're working on?
Well, we love the Defined Learning platform, because it really inspires teachers, whether they dig in directly to the platform and use as is, or get an inspiration from the Defined Learning platform. We have a variety of blueprint schools. One school that I'm working with now, it's a STEM, Morningside STEM school, and they're integrating social studies and science projects. So I'm stepping in to support there. They took a market project, which was the social studies task, and they integrated it with a science engineering task. And then we developed learning partners through teams. These were high school students that also had some engineering background and physics background. So that's something that I'm working on actually just right this week, is one of the final events of that project. But really, if I think about how we've used it in the past here in Sioux City, our community has been fantastic. I mean, we have asked for community learning partners, and we wanted to, a lot of project-based learning is based on job-based, and Defined Learning is career-based, a lot of that. And we love that component, but we really also like the idea that our students would engage with our community. And we've had feedback partners from our community. We've had businesses that have opened up. For example, we had some physics kids doing engineering or energy audits of businesses, and analyzing the space and analyzing costs that a business would spend on energy and ways to save energy. So that's something that I love, that because our what we're doing in schools is transparent. You go out into the community, and the community sees what your students are working on, and students see the value in what they're learning, that a business owner would want to think about these energy and science concepts. And then the business owner sees what the students are doing, and they are supportive of, more supportive of schools in terms of knowing what's going on. So it really does open up the lens both ways for students in schools and for businesses in the community. They become more of a partner, which it makes it a better situation. Stronger partnerships in communities are going to make learning so much better for kids. So that connection is what I really like about that.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. So you talked about defined learning, that platform. You have teachers using that at all different levels. Do you have any success stories or anything with your experience at the different levels of not just being necessarily high school or just elementary, but a continuum of pre-K 12? Maybe walk through where you're at with elementary or middle school, high school.
Yeah, so 2 projects coming up, and we're a big district, so we thought we really wanted to roll out carefully. So we're doing some pilots with some teachers. We wanted to make sure that we knew what we were doing so we could implement carefully, and that teachers really understood what could be there. So I want to support through that process. So we had a teacher, a 5th grade science teacher, or 5th grade teacher, classroom teacher, choose the prosthetics project, and that's getting ready to roll out for them. So in addition to what materials on the defined learning site, we also talked to a professional in our community who will teams into that class and talk about what his job is like. And he actually makes prosthetic devices. And so we're going to have that as maybe a hook to the beginning. This is somebody in our community, and then follow back through and make sure that he is a learning partner for their project. So that I'm really looking forward to that. That'll be a great thing for students to learn. It is social and emotional, like what does a person go through if they have to have a prosthetic device? What abilities do they have to do, and how do you think along with them? So besides this, the STEM piece of that, the science, you're talking about lever arms, you're talking about forces, you're talking about anatomy and physiology, you're talking about psychology, all those things bonded together. You're hitting so many targets at once. And you might think, oh, project-based learning takes a long time. But if you're overlapping and layering those standards and the things that you're aiming at, it really lets the student be a whole person in terms of, I can think about science in this minute, and I can think about, emotional learning in the next minute. And I'm going to have to stop, close the book, and go on to this next subject. Is less siloed, so students get more of a integrated approach. And then one more, I don't know, I could just keep talking for a long time, but there's another project with that matches our NGSS very well for kindergarten. And I, as a high school with a lot of high school experience, I'm thinking, okay, how's this going to work? Well, the kindergarten teacher picked the pushes and pulls, the playground activity, and we've got that slated obviously in the middle of winter. It's not so perfect, but we got that slated for later in the spring. And students will think about, okay, how do we design a playground? And the teacher would like to get there from the results of their project, present to their PTA or their principal admin. Like, here's some kindergartners talking about what kind of playground they have. Now that's pretty empowering, because they're creative. Those little kindergartners, they can think of these great ideas, and someone will listen to them, and they have to think about, well, how would I say it? And students with project-based learning, I think we get to the point where they have to verbalize. They can see patterns, they can analyze, but then they have to think. Maybe we asked second graders yesterday, what are the 3 best parts of our design? And they did a response video, and they really had to verbalize, well, let me think about that. Does our whole team agree on that? And those skills where they have to rank the attributes of their design or device. So it's not just, okay, let's just build some stuff. It's a lot deeper than that. And putting those supports in there are good for kids for learning. So
absolutely. That's awesome. I really like hearing students being empowered. I think one of the greatest things we can do is empower the students. And I love hearing that even at a kindergarten level. So one follow-up maybe to that would be, do you have any advice to teachers, districts, anyone that maybe is new to defined learning, hasn't used it? what would you say to them? Is it worthwhile? Is it something that, how has it been beneficial, I guess?
Well, we've had great support, and with the number of teachers we have that we rostered and the number of students we've had that we've rostered, you know, if there's a blip on the screen in terms of, well, did that rostering work well for everyone? The response has been like within the hour that there's been a correction. Maybe a teacher changed their name, or they moved to a different school and they need to be in the right roster. I mean, we're talking about lots and lots of teachers and thousands of students. So okay, so the support was the support to, you know, correct. If you think there's not going to be issues, that's really unrealistic. What you want to know as a teacher, well, will I have support, and will that support be quick, you know, and responsive? And so far it has been fantastic, really. Some other advice, just like we're having students partner in project-based, we want to have teachers partner, and to have another person thinking alongside is a really great thing. A consulting teacher, an AA consulting teacher, the teacher next door that maybe you both want to try the project, because just like we have students working together, teachers working together on this is really, really great. And I think that there's, you know, there would be support for that from the buildings in our district. You know, our consulting teacher network is very strong. And so we have a lot of people that come to support in classrooms, but also in the AA, great support in terms of consulting, science and math consulting teachers. So it just takes a little bit of reinventing. And even if it's sort of like, okay, yeah, the first time you jump off the high dive, ooh, is this the right thing to do? The payoff, it's difficult at the beginning to rethink a little bit, but then once you see it, it's sort of, the connections are more visible, and you can think about how much your learning implies in a lot of different project situations. So I think the payoff for students, like I had students 4 years ago in a project-based course that yesterday we just connected to be feedback partners. And they were so strong as feedback partners because that learning really meant something to them, and they understood how to give feedback and how to have dialogue. And those are really, really important skills. They have been for a long time, and they're important today too. But they know how to say, okay, hey, I wonder about this project. What's this like? It's really good for us to learn to ask questions and wonder, and gather information from people that we're working with, to have that kind of discussion and dialogue. So the payoff, you might think, ooh, that's going to take a lot of work to put that in. And it does. I'm not going to deny that. It does take a little extra work. But then once the students are working and you look back at your classroom and they've got a project going, you know that they're working harder than you are at that moment. It's sort of like when you set up an online class, we work it out, set up the structure, and then the students go. And yes, there are guidelines in project-based that you need to have. Okay, let's say that there's maybe a conflict in a group, or someone has an unavoidable attendance problem or something like that. You need to have the structures in place ahead of time so that they know, they're not surprised by, okay, this is the alternate path. And flexible thinking on the teacher's part is important. But yeah, if they're engaged, and this is probably a different kind of learning than they're seeing in every other classroom, when they get really engaged, that solves a lot of issues. I tell you, there's no time to pause. You're going, and you set your deadlines so that they're working fast, and they're working hard, and it really does take care of a lot of discipline problems. It takes care of kids that are interested, because everybody can meet that project at wherever they're at.
Excellent. Yeah, some of the best behavior plans are engaged students, right? When students are engaged and enjoying what they're learning about, a lot of behavior gets fixed that way, and is not an issue when they are engaged.
That's right.
Awesome. Shelly, we appreciate your time. We really appreciate your advice, what you've done, appreciate everything you're doing with students in this Sioux City School District. For those watching, just a reminder, you have access to Defined Learning through the Northwest AEA. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out and we'll get you set up with that.